What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. Today I'm going to talk about some aftermarket components for your Rival Kronos. So if you're into the Nerf Rival series at all, you have no doubt heard of the Rival Kronos. Spring-powered 5-round internal magazine pistol in the Rival series. Excellent performance, high velocity, great accuracy. It's pretty small. It fits into a lot of traditional style holsters. It's overall a great blaster, and in its unmodified form, it's definitely a great buy. But I've been experimenting with a few aftermarket components for the Kronos to make it even better, including a loading door delete kit, speed loader carrier, blaster mounted, speed loader carrier, gear mounted, cool looking mock red dot optic, a spring spacer to increase muzzle velocity, a cut down K26 spring specifically spaced for the Kronos, generating a muzzle velocity of over 140 feet per second, and a super snazzy holster that works with magnets, bro! Yeah, that's a thing. I'm so happy. Those are the items I'm going to talk about. Their purchase link to everything in the description box below, but now let's get into it one by one. Starting with a few 3D printed components by Foam Technician, who sells on Etsy, that creative place. There's a link in the description box to his web store. First is the access door delete kit. So this is a 3D printed component that looks pretty much like the standard access door, except there's a hole in it, which allows you to reload the magazine without lifting the access door. To load an unmodified Kronos, you prime it back and you lift up the access door like this, then you push in your balls. Yeah. Magazine lids like this often have a purpose. This one doesn't. So the Etsy seller Foam Technician was like, screw that, we don't need it, I'm gonna build a better one. And he did. So to load this one, you prime it back, and you don't have to open the access door. You can just push balls right on in. Yeah, bro. Saves you a step of lifting the access door. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. It's faster to reload and makes the Kronos more effective, with no disadvantages that I've found, so that's definitely a recommended component. That is the access door delete component by itself. But if you're sitting there loading one by one and you're like, there has to be a faster way to load the Kronos, there is. By the same seller, there's the speed loader. It's a pretty simple component. It's an open tube that you push the Rival balls in. It holds 5 rounds, the capacity of the Kronos. And at the bottom here, there's this little slide that moves freely within the tube. So when you want to reload the Kronos, you can put the speeding load tip, just the tip, right in the feeding hole, then pull down on the slide, and you've just loaded 5 rounds. Because sometimes you just gotta go fast, bro. To be clear, this doesn't make it faster to reload every single time. You still have to use the time to load the speed loader, which depending on your play style might defeat the point. But the idea of the speed loader, if you really dig the Kronos and you're using it like without a primary, you could have a bunch of the speed loaders preloaded sitting on your gear ready to go. It's not as fast as using an external box magazine like if you reload a Strife, but it makes reloading the Kronos a whole lot faster and way easier. You're not carrying loose balls trying to shove them in one by one. You just go just the tip and slide it on in there. Oh yeah. The speed loader itself is also 3D printed, which is a little bit more vulnerable than standard injection molded plastic. So the usage and the how not to break this component would fit under all of the other 3D printed rules. Like don't leave it in your car on a hot day or it might melt. Not like melt into goo, but probably just get deformed a little. Can you hear it? I'm melting, yeah! Transparency disclaimer, your speed loader, if you choose to purchase one, will not have the ability to scream and complain as it's melting. Video editing. With that as a speed loader, a super cool component that makes reloading the Kronos way faster. Next item, the speed loader carrier, blaster mounted. Because some of you probably just said, well, Frank, I want to buy like 10 of them, but where the heck do I keep them all? Potential solution, this little carrier can secure up to the tactical rail on the top here. And it just sits on the side of the blaster, which allows you to slide in the speed loader, which keeps the speed loader at the ready so you can pull it out super fast to reload super fast. I tried, and yes, you can carry 2 of these, one on each side, to carry 4 extra speed loaders. Probably excessive if you're just using your Kronos as a sidearm, but if you have to use your pistol as a primary, you could set up 1 on each side, so 4 on this blaster, then dual wield and have 4 on this, so have 8 speed loaders ready to go. That would just be insane. A Nemesis would probably still wreck you, but for pistol-only rounds, that would be pretty effective. So that is the blaster-mounted speed loader carrier. They also have a MOLLE attachable one. The unit itself, in my opinion, holds the speed loader a little bit more firmly than the blaster-mounted option. It might be more appropriate if you have MOLLE or like PALS webbing on your gear already, and you don't want the extra bulk of having speed loaders on the side of your pistol. These units can clip right into the webbing like this, so you can pull out your speed loader pretty quick. I have them just right on the front in this example, but of course with the PALS webbing, you can put it anywhere you want. And you can find webbing on anything if you go to like an airsoft website. This is like a drop leg panel, and this is a battle belt, so you can have it on your belt, on your leg, on your chest, maybe on your head. You can pretty much put MOLLE webbing anywhere. So those are the 2 offered carrying options for the speed loaders. You can also totally just put these in your cargo pocket or your bare pocket if you wanted to. The imagery. Oh. Back on topic, Franklin. Back on topic. Okay, back to Foam Technician's components. Up here, we have a mock red dot sight. This isn't an electronic optic. It doesn't even have like a plastic screen or anything. It's completely advertised as a fake sight because it looks badass, but of course it doesn't help you aim. It's just a big open hole when you look through it. But it's also advertised as a priming catch point. So instead of gripping down and squeezing in on the grip, you can just push against the sight like this, which makes priming a little bit easier. I wouldn't do that unless it was advertised to do that, because I personally wouldn't want to stress a 3D printed component. I think it looks super cool and I don't want to damage it, but it is strong enough to do that. If you use the K26 spring, which I'll go over in a moment, it might be too much force for this thing, or instead of pushing back on the sight with your hand like that, if you wear a tactical belt, you can actually prime it off your belt like that. The red dot is primarily cosmetic, so my opinion seems to be less relevant. I think it looks cool, but you can make that decision for yourself. And the last component, which I have installed in this Kronos, is the spring spacer. The concept of a spring spacer is to go behind the spring in order to add a little bit of compression to the existing spring, which draws a little bit more power out of the existing spring in the blaster. Before modification, I chronoed the Kronos and achieved an average velocity of 84 feet per second. After I installed the spring spacer with no other internal modifications, I achieved an average velocity of 98 feet per second, which is a noticeable jump, and the hop-up unit still works as it should. But it's worth noting, generally when you add extra compression to a spring and you keep it compressed, you can, over time, weaken that spring, or at least marginally so. I haven't experienced any decrease in velocity, but I haven't had this more than a month. That type of wear might occur over like 6 months, maybe 12 months, I don't know. Potentially an issue, but I haven't had that issue with mine. The spring spacer is the last component from Foam Technician. Again, he sells his stuff on Etsy. I'll leave a link in the description box to his web store. Segue to another internal modification component. So you're like, that spring spacer is cool, but 98 FPS isn't fast enough. I need more power. I need more power. We have the technology. And Out of Darts even sells the technology on his Etsy web store. Link in the description box to his store as well. This spring is a K26 spring, and the K26 is like 12 or 14 inches in length and a very common spring amongst modders. The K26 product he sells is cut down and recoiled at the end specifically for the Kronos. When you cut down a spring, if it's too short, they might have some plunger flop, and if it's too long, it won't be able to prime. So by buying one of his, it's coiled so it doesn't wrap around and like ruin the blaster, and you know it's the right size. And honestly, Out of Darts doesn't upcharge that much at all. It's a very fair little bump. So this K26 product is a complete replacement, unlike the spring spacer, which just helps out the factory spring. The K26 though is way stronger than the factory spring, which makes priming this guy really freaking difficult, man. My palm was dry that time, so it was a successful prime, but after I fired a few times, you know, I have sweaty palms. Just a little bit of moisture makes my hand slip off, and I can't physically prime it because it's so effing powerful. I put this blaster with the K26 spring up on my chronograph. To remind you, the factory Kronos shoots 84 feet per second. The modified one with the K26 shoots 146 feet per second. That is really effing hard for a primary, but for a little pistol, like gosh. Yeah, so if you're looking for the absolute most power you can pack into a pistol, yeah, the K26 spring is it. I want to retract that statement. You can probably pump more power into it, but good luck priming it, like at all. I do need to be serious about how difficult it is to prime this blaster with the K26. It's definitely not for everybody. If you're using it as your primary, it would honestly get exhausting to keep priming this back, but this might actually be perfect for somebody who doesn't use their pistol that often and wants to be able to pull it out already primed and just freaking Shrek somebody. Especially if you use the jam override button and have like 2 or 3 primed in there, you can just shotgun somebody with a little pistol. Like damn bro, the possibilities there to tactically pull it out, especially if you use the holster, which I'll go over in a moment. So that's it for the overview on the K26 spring that was already modified and sold by Out of Darts. Link to his Etsy store in the description box below. Unmodified Kronos. Spring spacer is the only internal modification. Reloading is so easy. Moving to the K26, much harder to pry. Intentionally loading tube. Cool. Next product for your Kronos and also other blasters, the magnetic holster, or hold stir. That's what it's called, because it holds. You get it? It's funny. So how the magnetic holster works. It works by magnets. There are magnets on the holster thing and magnets on the blaster. This component is specifically designed for the Kronos, so it fits around the shell ridge right here. And by the instructions of the seller, you just super glue it onto the shell. I use normal super glue and it's been holding up to my abuse pretty well. But there's no screws, you don't have to open the blaster, it's pretty quick to install. They also have one that's specifically designed for the Strife and specifically designed for the Chaos magazine. Once you glue this component on here, it's supposed to stick to the blaster. This part isn't like modular. If you needed to, you could rip it off and re-glue it to something else, but that's not something you would do like on the game day. However, if you have multiple attachments, you can totally quick flip these blasters super fast. But to the holster itself, it's sold in like a universal format and a drop leg format. The magnetic mechanism is identical, it's just the attachment mech that changes. The large plate you see is 3D printed, then there's this center thing which looks to be injection molded. I'm not sure if he like sources that out and then installs it himself, or if he injection molds or creates that, I have no idea. But the magnetic component doesn't appear to be 3D printed. So the spacing of the magnet corresponds with the magnets on the blaster, so when you get them close, it sticks, or it holds, because it's a holdster. If you try to pull from any direction, it's really not going to go anywhere. It's designed to be released upward, which adds to the security. It's not like you just glue a magnet to your hip, glue a magnet to your blaster, and stick it there. Any subtle little bump will totally make that blaster slide off the magnet. This is more secure than that. So when it's secured to draw, you just pull up, and it doesn't take that much force to pull it out. It's not the difficulty to pull out, it's the will to pull out. That's what ruins it. Joke's probably over the line. Well, the universal version of the holster right here has these mounting points on the back. The screws are set at a standardized distance that fits with a lot of tactical gear like these. This one is a belt rig, so you can just put it right through a normal street belt and wear it as a hip holster. This mount, which doesn't have the holster on it, I could unscrew it from this and then screw it onto that. And these little claws are designed to go into molly webbing, like onto a tactical vest. It really is universal because this is a standardized hole setup, so you can find all sorts of accessories and mounting positions. If you want to place the blaster somewhere, there's almost guaranteed some way to tactically do it. It's worth noting, the belt mount as it's set up here sits really high up on the body. When I go for my pistol, I want the grip to be about here, not all the way up here. But for some body types and some gear loadouts, you might want that. The drop leg holster magnetic portion is exactly the same as the universal version. It has a 3D printed plate, albeit in a slightly different format, along with the identical little like clips. So again, you can totally... Magnets are so cool, dude. There are 3 straps on the drop leg holster. The top one goes to your belt to drop. And these lower 2 go around your leg to prevent floppation. The security of the blaster to the holster, or holdster, is phenomenal. These magnets are pretty strong, but not too strong to the point where like it's annoying to pull it off. So when you're sitting there like a sheriff, you're like, oh, quick draw. Yeah, it's really fast for those situations, because we all get in those situations every once in a while. But these straps, in my opinion, are pretty simple by nature. They're very basic. Leg straps like these work way better if they have elastic built into them, because if they're tight enough not to move, they cut off circulation to your leg or prevent motion. And if they're loose enough to allow you to move freely like a ninja to do hardcore parkour, then it's too loose and it flops around. In my opinion, having like 2 inches of elastic built into the strap would help with that, because it's tight enough to hold it still, but it allows flexing when you really stress it. Furthermore, there's no like quick disconnect on these straps. You have to tuck them through this little like adjustment thing. This is a super common adjustment system. If you've ever adjusted the strap on a duffel bag, it's like the same thing. But leg straps like this often have like quick disconnect clips, so you can unclip it when you're done, click it back on to the same exact size. This one doesn't have that, so you have to readjust the spacing every time you like put on the holster, which is a little bit of a disadvantage in my opinion. But in full disclosure, my expectations out of tactical gear is pretty high because I run it with like firearms. So I get a little frustrated when I'm using something that very clearly feels like a toy grade product, which is why I complain so hard about the tactical gear that Nerf sells. So if you really dig magnets, and who doesn't like magnets, I mean, come on now, and you want a more secure option, perhaps buy the universal one, then separately purchase a drop leg molly panel like this one, or whatever. That's just my personal recommendation. This is a Kronos specific video, but I do want to mention they also have a Strife mount, so you can put on your Flywheel Master Race sidearm. Because what's the perfect backup to your Flywheel Master Race primary? A Flywheel Master Race secondary. And there's also a Chaos magazine mount, so that glues right to the Chaos magazine, securing it to your side. So the base magnetic portion of this holster works really well. The attachment system is great. How well you mount the attachment to your body and your gear is entirely up to you, but the blaster holds very well to the holster. But it's secure, so if you get bumped or it gets pushed from any direction other than a quick draw up, you know, it's very secure. So that concludes the overview of the holster unit. So a few notes and purchase recommendations based on everything that I've covered today. First and foremost, if you use a Kronos at all, I would highly recommend the access door delete kit. After using this, I think it's ridiculous that Nerf put the access door there. This is such a better idea. I'm all about automation and getting rid of tasks that a human should not be doing. If a machine can do it, let the machine do it so a human can focus on human things that a computer can't do. Yet, Skynet will take over eventually. But for now, we need to keep our creativity or whatever. So I definitely definitely recommend the Delete Kit. It's only a couple bucks. I mean, it's not an expensive component, and it definitely helps you reload faster. That's pretty much for anybody that uses a Rival Kronos. If you're a gearhead and you have tactical gear all over and you have the real estate and you don't mind the extra bulk, these speed loaders help a lot. If you play more casually, it might not make sense to hand load the speed loaders before each round when you can just carry a big sack of balls, a ball sack, so then you grab them and hand load into your Kronos. Kind of what makes like a hopper or this type of loading system pretty convenient. And that's great for certain players. I would say a bit more casual mentality. These speed loaders just help you reload a lot faster. I'd recommend them if you have the extra space on your body. Next recommendation is the spring spacer. It gives you a chrono velocity of about 98 feet per second, but it doesn't make it impossible to prime like the K26. And for my test, there's no disadvantage to adding the spring spacer or the Delete Kit. The K26 spring is a phenomenal performance upgrade, and I'd recommend it if you're like a Hulk dude and you just have wicked strong hands from, you know, exercising. Oh, and you could manage to grip and prime back the wicked strong spring. It's 146 feet per second, which is just stupid hard. But I'm an adult and I would say my strength in my hands is probably average, and it's really hard to prime back the K26, so it's definitely not for everybody, but if you can manage it, you are going to wreck everybody. And purchase recommendation on the holster system, if you saw this and you're like, magnets, I have to have it. Like I said, when I saw it on the Etsy store, I was like, I need this right now. If that was your reaction, I would definitely recommend it. I'm impressed with the design. It works really well. If you're skeptical because you don't think it fits your playstyle or you know how you set up your gear, you might be right. It's definitely not for everyone. I'll personally be running it with some type of Molly adapter system on the belt. If you don't have much experience with tactical gear and your standards are kind of lower, the drop leg unit will probably work well for you. It's not like it comes off and it allows your blaster to drop on the ground or anything like that. It's just not as comfortable and it doesn't work quite as well as other rigs. So if you're experienced with tactical gear and you have a little higher standards, you might buy the standard rig and then set up your own Molly contraption on your own. The other cosmetic components worked as advertised, so there's no objective reason not to purchase them. But the fake red dot is almost entirely cosmetic, so my opinion's almost irrelevant. Purchase it if you want to. And I'll personally totally be using these speed loaders if I field a Kronos. But the on-blaster storage system isn't really my taste. I prefer the Molly webbing just to have a few on my belt. It's just a little bit more out of my way. I like my blasters to be light and fast. But if you use a traditional holster with the spacers, it won't work. If you use the magnetic rig, you can totally have everything. It'll just stick to the side with the spacers just protruding out. Super bulky, and you might break something off if you smack into a door frame because you'll be like a few inches wider, but that might work for you. That concludes my overview on a few cool Kronos aftermarket components that I've recently discovered. This video turned out way longer than I intended, so thanks for sticking around if you stuck around to this point. All three of the sellers of these products sell on Etsy. I'll leave all of their individual store links in the description box below. Hopefully I've aided you in your potential purchase decision. If you use a Kronos, I definitely recommend checking out some of these components. That concludes this super long video. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.